misconceptions as to when the best time is to spay and neuter your dog. So I want to dispel some of the myths and maybe different ideas that there are out there by talking with veterinarian Kent Bruner here and get some answers to these questions. When is the best time to spay and neuter your dog?
Well, there are a lot of opinions about when to do that, and I think you have to remember why we're doing it to begin with. And for most dogs, we're doing spay and neuter to prevent behavior problems. And so for me, the correct age is before they go into puberty. But each reason for neutering, like in a shelter, they may be doing it very young because they want to get them spayed and neutered before they go out. And the studies really have not shown problems with that. And for most pets, where we're simply trying to produce the best pet with the fewest behavior problems, that's not going to end up in a shelter because of problems, we need to get that done before they come into puberty.
So puberty really is around 6 months, would you say, or does it differ from dog to dog?
It differs a little bit. In general, I think 7 to 8 months. Smaller dogs will be a little earlier. Bigger dogs will be a little bit later. So that's kind of why we, as a profession, have always settled around 6 months. That's kind of the age where we do it. We like to get them done by 6 months. They're a little older, so we're not doing little puppy anesthesia, but it's before they come into puberty, because puberty causes a lot of behavior problems.
Yeah.
You know, you end up with sexual traits like marking and mounting and even aggression. You know, most dog bites are actually by intact male and intact female dogs. And so we want to prevent those problems. Those are the reasons dogs are ending up in shelters.
Now, there's a thought out there as well that you should have your bitch have at least one heat cycle first before you spay her. Is that needed or not?
No, that's not needed. In fact, it's actually detrimental, because the more heat cycles she has, even if you spay her later, it increases her risk of breast cancer, of mammary cancer. And so that risk increases up through about 3 heat cycles. So we really want to get them spayed before they have a heat. So it's not a good idea. And you also run the risk, of course, that they may get pregnant. People think that their dogs are going to behave the same when they go into heat, when they go through puberty, and they're not. The boys and the girls are going to go out and try and find a mate. And so you start having all these things happen, you know, accidents happen, and so it's just easier to prevent it. It's really, spay and neuter is behavior prevention. You know, it's just a very good thing to do, and it's better if you do it before they hit puberty.
There's also a thought that the actual pediatric neutering, when you neuter puppies too early, that is detrimental to their development. What would you say with regards to that?
You know, when you're looking at pets, I don't think the studies have shown anything that's really detrimental. If you had a dog that you were doing agility with, or you know, some sport where they need to be fully developed, and and those are things that muscle development, maybe a little bit of bone growth, sex hormones affect that. And so maybe in that case you'd say, okay, we want to wait. But that's a very select group of dogs, really. And for owners, for just our regular pets, and for dogs who are trying to get adopted, dogs don't end up in shelters because they're half-inch short. You know, they end up in there because of behavioral issues. And so you really want to get that done early. But the pediatric spay and neuter, at this point, we really don't see long-term problems with it.
Now, it's been my experience that when there is a dog that's showing some kind of behavioral issues and they're still intact, a lot of the time when you neuter them, we're talking about male dogs here, when you neuter them, that it can help improve their behavior along with behavior modification.
Right.
But some dogs, when they're having these behavioral issues, neutering doesn't help them at all.
Right. There's sort of 3 groups, I think. You know, it's kind of really just about thirds. There's a third of the dogs it will help, and it'll sort of solve the problem. For a third of the dogs it helps some, and for a third it really doesn't do much of anything. Unless the problem's aggression. If the problem's aggression, spaying and neutering typically doesn't help. Once you have that sort of show up, usually you can't go back and do spay and neuter. And because, you know, a lot of bites, and the majority of bites are by intact male and females. Once you have that behavior, typically spaying and neuter does not help. Particularly, typically we're thinking more boys, and it really doesn't help. Neutering may help some other behaviors like the mounting and the marking, and may or may not. Third of the time it'll make it better, third time it might help some, third time it doesn't do anything. So again, we really want to use neutering and spaying as a preventative for behavior problems and get those done before all the secondary sexual behaviors show up, because at that time we don't know really whether it'll help or not. But with aggression, it usually doesn't.
Now, what do you say to those people out there that do not want to neuter their male dogs because they don't want their male dogs to be feminized?
Right.
And they like the look of the testicles,
right.
Basically. What do you say to them? Because I come across this all
the
the
time,
and it drives me crazy. Your dog is still going to be very much a dog, even without its testicles. It's not your testicles we're taking off.
Right.
It's your dog's
right.
testicles, and he's going to be much happier
right.
for it.
It's a very common thing. It's kind of, it's kind of a macho attitude, that they don't want to neuter their dog, and you just need to. You need to. They're still going to be a boy. It's not gonna, change them that much. It's just gonna really remove all those secondary sexual characteristics that we don't want, and particularly with boys, but also with girls. Roaming. You see intact dogs and they're out roaming because there's a girl in heat somewhere and they're trying to find her. Those dogs end up in the emergency clinic because they get hit by cars, and there's so many problems. And really, it's in the dog's best interest to get it done. I know that it's uncomfortable for some guys, particularly guys, but it's the best thing you can do to go ahead and get it done. If it's not a dog that you plan on breeding, get them neutered. Get them neutered. It's just the best thing you can do for them health-wise. It prevents prostatic problems, different cancers that they could get, in addition to all the behavioral changes. And if you really like the look of testicles, they make silicone implants that you could get.
Nudicles, is that?
Nudicles.
Awful. But yeah, that you can. You can have surgically.
You could have surgically implanted testicles, so he still looks like a boy.
Okay. Now, what about neutering via injection? What does that do?
It's something that I don't think's really caught on, but it's an injection into the testicle itself, and it just causes enough damage in a certain kind of way, but basically it renders the testicle sterile, and that is an option. I don't know that it's done a lot. I mean, I think for most guys that's more aversive than just take them out than the thought of the injections. But at one time it was sort of popular, at least it's sort of at the forefront, and then it's kind of dropped off. We don't hear much about it anymore.
Okay. So your advice then to the general dog owner out there is to spay and neuter their dog at around 6 months of age, before their dog reaches puberty, before the bitch goes in, has her first heat cycle.
Yes.
That's much better for behavior and much better for health-wise.
Right. Physically, prevents a lot of the cancers and different problems. It reduces their risk of those things and improves behavior. And I'm more concerned about us doing it too late than too early. Too early, really, what we know now at this point doesn't concern me as much as all the problems we see from waiting, and then we get behavior problems and we get dogs in shelters. Dogs are in shelters because of behavior problems. So we need to do it before we hit puberty, as a behavior preventative step.
And a lot of those dogs in shelters, of course, there are no homes for them, so they're getting euthanized.
Right.
So it's better to spay and neuter your dog.
Right. Yeah. Not only everybody always thinks of the unwanted pregnancy, and that's why we do it, to keep dogs out of shelters. But we're also concerned about that individual dog as well, that they don't develop all those characteristics that puts them in shelters. So it's more than just unwanted puppies, which is obviously a big part of it, but it's also preventing behavioral issues in that individual dog that's going to make them more prone to end up in a shelter.
Thank you for talking to us today. Spaying and neutering your pet is a responsible thing to do. I'm Victoria Stilwell for eHow Pets.